My Georgia official prediction for this year. Here's what you need to know. Before I tell you what I think, the over-under win total is 10.5 at FanDuel right now. They got the best odds in the SEC to win the conference. They've got the best odds in the country to win the national championship. They are seeking their fourth straight undefeated season. And as we dive into this, here's another paper popper of a stat. This is kind of a padlock stat if you think about it. Saturday, November 7th, 2020. Where were you? Probably locked up in your house wearing a mask. But more specifically, what happened that day? Anyone? Anyone? Georgia lost a football game that day, I believe to Florida. The reason that date is important is because that is the last date that Georgia lost a football game to someone other than Alabama. If not for Bama, Georgia has not lost a football game since November 7th of 2020. So what do we think we know here? I think I know this will be a top 5 offense. It was last year. It's not like they need to improve at all. Running back, if you look at the positions across the board, Carson Beck came back, huge deal, obviously. Running back, offensive line, wide receiver, as good or better than they were last year. It's fair to expect that. Tight end loses Brock Bowers, and yet it's still one of the best tight end rooms in the country. Let me say that again. They lost Brock Bowers and still have one of the best tight end rooms in the country. That's called recruiting and developing, mainly recruiting though, but a healthy amount of development there as well. And I also think I know they got 2 first-rounders at least over on defense, and Mykel Williams and Malachi Starks. And there will be others, but those are 2 that you can pretty much take to the bank. And the third thing I think I know about Georgia is, even having said all that, this won't be easy. This won't be easy. Every year people get amnesia. This time of year, folks get amnesia, and you just bristle at the mere idea that the number 1 team in the country could lose a football game, or someone could pick against the number 1 team in the country to win it all. Well, do you watch this game? Do you watch this sport? This stuff happens every year. This team right here would have been favored to win the national title last year, even after they lost in Atlanta. But they didn't get a shot because it's hard to win this sport. Even when you load these classes up like Kirby Smart does, even when you're favored wire to wire, it's hard, and it will be this year as well. Now, here's what I want to know. I want to know how good they are up front on defense. If there's one request that I get more than any request about the show, I got it like 50 times today because I talked to a lot of personnel types today. It is, please talk poorly about us. Please don't be hyping us up. Please don't be feeding us rat poison. So I happen to know several players on that defense watch the show. So I'm going to do you a favor. I don't really fully believe all of this, but I will say maybe Georgia's just pretty good up front. Maybe that's it. Maybe they're not elite. Maybe they don't have that vintage Georgia flavor there. Maybe I can convert 3rd and 3 on them with regularity. Maybe they can't get home against the quarterback regularly enough. Maybe it's not quite Georgia of the past up front. Was that good? Guys, was that good? You know who I'm talking to over there. All right. Hey, man, Georgia's still going to be pretty good up front. But I do mean what I say when I do wonder, how good will they be there? Because there's a difference between that Georgia elite standard versus pretty to really good. And the difference is getting home 1 or 2 more times per game against the quarterback, forcing 1 more turnover or 2 more turnovers that could define a season for you. So, it's not a game. Well, it is a game, but it's not something to be played with. Next, the corner depth behind Dalen Everett. It's interesting. First world problem, because Georgia, when you talk about green players, you talk about unproven players. Man, I'm talking about Julian Humphrey, like Ellis Robinson, just freak show players that don't have a ton of starting experience. But when you go look at, like practice B-roll, or if you get to go to practice and you watch these dudes, you're just standing there and you're saying, who is that? And that's just Ellis Robinson. The elite freshman? Yeah, that's him. He looks like the seniors look on some of the teams Georgia's going to play. Yeah, actually, no, their seniors don't even look that good. So, yes, this is a question. Behind Dalen Everett, Dan Jackson's got 6 starts. I think they worked him at safety some this week. Daniel Harris, Julian Humphrey, Ellis Robinson. Yes, technically, I still have to see the production. Yes, technically, it's not there. These are good football players. Well, these are players who have elite skill, and they'll probably be good football players for Georgia this year. But can they pressure the quarterback? This was an issue for them last year. When we talked to Kirby in February, we went down there, did a whole show at Georgia, had him on the show for 30 minutes. He said that was one of his biggest concerns. Can we get after the quarterback enough this year? I know some of you think it's stupid to talk about sacks. I've gone full circle on the stat. I know that sacks are not the end-all, be-all. I actually know if I pressure the quarterback and don't sack him, but my pressure forced an interception that goes back to the house, that's actually better than a sack. I know all that, guys. But I think people have overthought the room on this. There's never been a sack in the history of football where the offense got positive yardage. There's never been a sack that was a good thing for the offense. So I've gone full circle. I'm actually about to start throwing sacks back in people's faces. Immunity of the highest order on that line. But sacks, new rule, sacks are cool again. Georgia was 47th in the country in sacks last year. This is the whole reason behind that spiel, so I can just throw that stat at you. Michael, I think, had 4.5 sacks and led the team. So whether you want to talk about havoc rate, quarterback pressures, quarterback hurries, outright sacks, Georgia wasn't quite Georgia last year in that category. I know they've worked on it ad nauseum. Will they be much better there? Here's the staff breakdown. We got every coach, coordinator, assistant coach graded in the entire country. Georgia's got the number one head coach in the country. Georgia's got a top 5 staff as we see it right now in the country. This defensive support staff, beneath the coordinator level, in other words, is top 15. That offensive support staff lost some guys. It's really hard to retain when you're an elite staff. Like Del McGee's not there anymore, for example. We still got that offensive support staff top 30, maybe down a tick from what we've seen in the past at Georgia. Kirby Smart, how about this? So we've got him as the top active head coach. Also, we've got him as the highest graded defensive coordinator of the last 15 years. So another word for that is stud, but I wanted to put an actual numeric grade on it. There's no real weakness here. It's just relatively speaking, that offensive support staff may be down a touch in overall grade quality. The schedule is extremely tough for Georgia this year. Georgia's hung out in the SEC East for a long time. This is not the SEC East anymore. I've got them playing 6 of my top 21 teams preseason power rating wise. I've got them playing 6 of my top 21 teams, and they play 5 of them away from home. A couple of those are neutral site games, but 5 or 6 of those are away from Athens. They got at Texas, they got at Bama, they got at Ole Miss, Tennessee at home. They go to Kentucky. We've got Kentucky, I think, 26 in the JP poll. I'm not even mentioning that. At Kentucky would be some of you guys' toughest games. And so the cumulative effect that this can have is to the degree that I don't think there's a whole lot of skill in looking at a schedule and mapping out your wins and losses. I'll give you a record projection in a second, but I don't give you the specific games that I think you'll win or lose. It's fun. I don't think there's a lot of skill in it. But that's a tough schedule. It will test your depth. That's what it will do. The best case and worst case for Georgia this year, there's always a best case scenario of 12-0 as long as Kirby Smart's at Georgia. However, the worst case for them, considering the schedule, has to be a little bit more extreme than you'd normally expect it to be with Georgia. So I got their worst case at 8-4. How would that happen? A quarterback injury combined with this schedule. It's pretty basic. Worst case for everyone is just a bunch of injury. You lose your tough games. Georgia plays a lot of tough games. What I think they'll do, this is going to be controversial. I've got them going 10-2 right now as we sit here in early August. I think there may be 2 losses on that schedule. That still makes them a playoff team, but if you want to know how Georgia can be favored in the SEC, I've got them power rated number 1. I think Georgia enters the season as the best team in the country. I think this schedule is tough enough that the best team in the country could stand to lose 2 games, which sounds counterintuitive. It's not. Schedule is not equal. Record is not equal, therefore, in college football. So 10-2 for the number 1 team in the country. Is that possible? It is possible. It's also possible that if Georgia makes the playoff, with a 10-2 record, they may still be a point spread favorite against anyone they play. There's a world where that's possible.